Welcome to Capital to the Coast BNI. My name is Mike Manning. Each week we bring you a local small business success story from one of our 41 chapters stretching from Mebane all the way to the coast, Wilmington and the New Bern and areas that way. If you're not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our goal each week is to help our fellow members grow their business. And our local small business success story this week, we've got a treat for us, folks, because we have a professor on the call here. Chip Galusha is a teaching instructor at East Carolina University. A couple other things with Chip is he is the interim director of the Miller School of Entrepreneurship teaching instructor, and a teaching instructor leadership and professional development program. So a lot of things going on. Chip, how you doing today?
I am doing well. Thank you very much.
Did I get all your titles right?
Yeah, it's academia. We love them.
There you go. All right. So Chip is also the consulting director for the BNI chapter in New Bern called Business in the Bern. So if you're ever that way, want to meet some good professionals to do business with, please stop in and visit them. So interim director of the Miller School of Entrepreneurship. This has been a year. How long you been doing this?
It'll be 2 years. Well, probably 2 years about now, officially July 1st.
Okay. How's that been? Have you enjoyed that?
And it's been a lot of fun. The school is great. Well, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that and a lot about our students. It meant kind of going back into management with faculty, management's management, right? And doing all that kind of fun stuff. But we're really doing some fun stuffs in the school and just reaching out to Eastern North Carolina. So it's been a pleasure working with that and seeing some of those programs.
And in the fall, you'll just roll back into being an instructor?
Yeah, probably. I kind of got embedded here in the school a little bit. I think I'll still work with our innovation centers, our entrepreneurship or innovation hub, and try and help spread the message of entrepreneurship throughout the campus. We're trying to be real co-curricular. As they say, there's one fun thing about entrepreneurship. If you go to school and you study accounting, when you graduate, you account.
Yes.
And if you go to school and study management, when you graduate, you manage. If you go to school and study entrepreneurship, when you graduate,
Yeah.
right, you don't entrepreneur. You do so. So we have to be connected to other people, and we have to be connected to other programs. And so there's really one of our pushes is to get this idea that we want to be entrepreneurial support for the artists in the group, for the engineers on campus, for the musicians, for the doctors, the medical staff. They can all use some of this entrepreneurial mindset approach. And so hopefully I'll be helping with that in the fall. Still teaching a couple classes in leadership and then working with that.
Yeah, it's real interesting to look at the landscape of business owners. And there's a big difference between a business owner and being an entrepreneur. Because a lot of times we start a business, we know what we're doing painting,
Mhm.
photography. In general, we kind of know the skill set and the
Yeah.
craft. But most of us, for the first time in small business, we've never run a small business. We've always like, well, I cut grass or I just take pictures. And there's a lot more to that. So the mindset and always working with folks and talking with small business owners, the mindset they need to be in to understand what an entrepreneur is and does is what?
This is the entrepreneurial mindset, and you've used the right words, and you're coming at that. And there's a lot of different ways to come at that. I think if we've ever done any work with E-Myth, he talks about working on your business versus
Mhm.
working in your business. And we take a slightly broader view of entrepreneurship here. I think that sometimes people will get a little scared by this idea that if you want to be an entrepreneur, in fact, you go to a room and say, name some entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
right? They're going to Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, right? No, no offense. Nobody's gonna be like Mike Manning,
Mhm.
but
Nope.
but you are, and just as much as they are. And then, in fact, my argument is that Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk are no longer entrepreneurs because they're running billion-dollar companies with these huge support staffs. So we take a broader view of what an entrepreneur is. And sure, it involves finding something that's never been done before and creating it, but it also involves small business, family business,
Mhm.
and it also involves corporate innovation. And so there's an entrepreneurial mindset that we embed in all of our classes and on how we help our students to this idea of I'm going to really want to see a problem and I'm going to solve it. And every day we walk through life, we trip over problems and we always think, man, I wish somebody would solve that somehow. I wish somebody would fill in that pothole, or I wish somebody would figure out a way to make, this process work easier. And the entrepreneurial mindset says, well, maybe I'll be the one that figures that out. And so it doesn't matter if it's raising 30 million billion dollars to do a thing or going to family and friends for $1,000 to start something that solves a problem. And so it's that mindset that really becomes valuable to folks. And there are any number of businesses that, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Well, maybe I just need to make some money, so I'm just going to mow some lawns.
Mm.
And so you go out in your lawnmower, but you don't think of yourself in that entrepreneurial way, when in fact that could be the kernel of something to start out that becomes a lot larger. It's a question of how you think about it.
Is it planning that we miss out on, and we just, like you said, just start cutting grass and I'll see where it takes me?
Yeah, and we get into the idea of it's the doing. I'm just going to go do this thing, and I don't think of it as a business. There are an amazing number of these, and my stats are a little old, so I'm not going to rattle off the percentages, but a whole lot of businesses in the United States are small businesses. Now,
Mm.
the SBA says that's 500 people or less. So, you know, we like to think about the Carolina Hurricanes are a small business according to the SBA, but we might not think of them that way.
Mm.
But of those small businesses, which employ the vast majority of people, then a lot of them are owned by folks that are 55 and older. So there's this silver tsunami that's happening as people retire out of these small businesses. The trick is a lot of them just, I'm a plumber, or I'm a carpenter, or I'm a landscaper, and I have a truck or two trucks. And then when I get done with my business, I just sell off my lawnmowers and I sell my trucks and I retire. It's a thought process of thinking about that as a business that has goodwill, it has value, and that business could be sold to somebody else, which does a lot better for the person retiring, and it also perpetuates these small businesses. And we look at that a lot throughout the county, the 39 counties that we work in Eastern North Carolina to help succession planning. So to your point, it's thinking about it like it's a enterprise, like it's a business. I have succession planning. Who's going to do this after I do? Are there new markets I can go after? Can I, maybe you've just done it for 30 years. You're done with it and you want to move on. You know it could do better, but sell it to somebody younger. Spend 6 months or a year mentoring them, and then see where it goes from there. So it's a way of thinking about it that really matters.
Yeah, and a lot of things that I see with new small business owners is their approach of themselves and the image of their company. Like, do you have, let's say you're a tradesperson, whether it's HVAC or painting or whatever, do you have on a professional collared shirt?
Mhm.
When you
Mhm.
walk into my house, do you put those little booties on your shoe or
Yeah,
take your shoes off so you don't track stuff in? But just little things like that. Is your truck clean? If
yeah.
I see you working with your equipment, is it relatively clean? And just the image that to start to tell people, this is not a hobby for me. This is a business. And I think we miss that sometimes.
I think we do, and at any size, I think you're right. It doesn't matter. It just starts any size business, how you're going to approach it. And I'm not saying that everything has to become, huge.
Yeah.
Right? There's a great book called A Company of One, which has a lot to do with just controlled growth. There's nothing that says you have to get a fleet of trucks and be, the number one HVAC in the world. But you're right. I mean, the HVAC people I use, I've used forever. The first time I ever used them, like you said, they wore the booties. That when they the last thing they were done before they were done, they said, "Hey, where's your vacuum cleaner?
Mhm.
We're gonna clean up this dust." And I was sold. I mean, that's just it. They're just my vacuum. They're just my HVAC.
And at the end of the day, that's what the consumer is buying, because we
Mhm.
can find everybody's competitor, take us about 20 minutes, probably have something set up for this afternoon, a phone call, a visit, something. And we forget sometimes as business owners, okay, Mike as the consumer, would I pay for that?
Mhm.
Oh, they're
Yeah,
late. They're good, but they're always late.
yeah. In fact, I had a discussion with the university. We did a program. We had a whole bunch of high school counselors in, and we had an interesting solution for lunch that we all liked. It's alum, but it's slow service.
Mm.
And so you do that a couple times and people start thinking, I've got a time frame. I got to fit into it.
Mhm.
I got to do a thing. I think part of that has to do with a lot of times that we confuse ourselves in kind of what business we're in. Right? And I know we've had talks. I know this is kind of in your wheelhouse. This idea that you're the product that you sell is not really what I'm trying to buy. I'm trying to buy a solution to my problem.
Yep.
You have one way of doing that. So I don't really a lot of times care about the speeds and feeds. I don't, the business schools way back, right? Hardware stores don't sell drill bits; they sell holes, right? I need a quarter-inch hole in this board. I give you a drill bit, you give
Yeah.
me a woodpecker. I don't really care because the mechanism of how I get there. So we get caught up in our solution. Oh, I have this great whiz bang technology. I can do all of this stuff. That's just fine, but that is a means to an end. And it's that end that we have to keep our mind on. So the customer experience is important. Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, if more business owners would take a look at where they spend their money and then why they spend it there, I think they'll apply some of that logic or mindset to their business and understand that, okay, what are people really wanting to pay for? And that could be a maintenance plan on your HVAC unit that
Mhm.
we just tell you, hey, it's your quarterly maintenance check. We'll be over on Tuesday if that works for you. We should be there between 9 and 10 a.m. And then I'm paying for you to watch over my HVAC unit
Right.
and tell me when something needs to be done.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The solution there is the maintenance program is an interesting way to do that. I think you could also do it other ways because the point of it is there a way I can pay less to be sure that my stuff's
Mhm.
working so I'm not going to pay more later?
Yep.
Maintenance plans are a great way to do that. There may be another way. I don't know.
Mhm.
But that's also kind of where the whole come back to the entrepreneurial thing. Find another way to do that or find a better way to do that and then go ahead. Then just don't get wrapped up in the fact that I have now created a better mousetrap and I'm ruling the world because there's always somebody else who's going to try and solve that problem too.
Yeah. So the students that are enroll at East Carolina and they end up in one of your classes or in the School of Entrepreneurship, do they have a plan yet?
A lot of them do, and that's one of the great parts about this program. It's very experiential in bringing businesses into the classes themselves. So we do a lot of casework and very little textbook work. So we have programs that a small business could maybe wants a marketing plan. Well, they can sign up and have their company as a class project,
Oh,
and they'll get a marketing plan out of it. So it's you have time or money, right? Do you need a marketing plan today?
mhm.
You may need to pay for it. Do you just need one eventually? Then there's a free shot at going into a class. And so the students will work with a lot of other students. We have one of our capstone classes as a senior is called New Venture Launch, in which they actually just launch a new business, and a lot of them do it for real. I think last semester we had $50,000 in sales in our classes just from new ventures that had been launched, and this is just money the students are taking in.
Nice.
So a lot of them come in with ideas. Um, some of them just come in and know that they don't want to do corporate
Mm.
9 to 5 stuff. Some of them have an idea. We get a number of them that, my parents have a business and I'm coming to school. I'm going to learn this entrepreneurship stuff. And then eventually I'm going to take over the business. So we have a family business class where we talk about succession planning and the dynamics of managing a family business. Cause it's nice when it's like you and maybe you and your husband or wife or best friend have started a business, but now next generation is 6 kids or eight
Mm.
kids. And then the generation after that, right, is where most of them fail because you're into like 13, 14 kids. And how do you split that up and how do you make decisions? So there's managing the family business is interesting. So yeah, we do a lot of this kind of direct stuff. Some students say, I'm going to come in, I'm going to start this X business, I'm going to do this thing. And some of them are just looking for here's a good safe space to come up with some ideas, try some things and see who I can meet. Um,
Are those students mostly coming from an entrepreneur family or background, or they just, I don't want to do corporate and I want to start my own?
That would be an interesting question to have answer. I know that there is a significant amount that do have some because there's we'll see them at orientation. Their parents will be there like, well, I've got a marketing business and my son or daughter wants to be part of it.
Mm.
Some have fairly large businesses. So there is anecdotally a substantial amount. I think that in the other respect, it's just some students are looking at the world and saying, I don't know that I necessarily feel like, what we used to grow up with, 9 to 5 and 30 years in a gold watch is really
Yeah.
the way things are going to go. And so I want to take a little bit control of my own life and do that. And then that result of that is that, take a student that goes through this program, they're going to learn this entrepreneurial mindset. They're going to be able to work in teams because entrepreneurs are have to be consummate team builders. They're going to be able to think critically about stuff, and they're going to be able to understand and evaluate opportunities. And so really any job would want somebody who has that skill set. And so it sets them up well for whether they want to actually find a bare patch of dirt somewhere and raise up a new business, or else they want to um, go into corporate innovation or a small business, or there's a relatively new field called entrepreneurship through acquisition. And they may want to buy a small business. So
Mm.
they're really set up pretty well for whatever they want to do.
Do they do internships during this program?
Yes, you can officially do an internship. Some of them will actually do that for credit. Some of them will just work with small business founders in their class projects. But yeah, we do offer internships with small business or small to medium sized businesses throughout the area. Or if you're from across the country and you've got something back home, you can do an internship there too as well.
I would imagine some of the local businesses in the area would be wise to take advantage of things like this.
Yes, and there are a bunch that do that. Um, through structured programs and just sort of they got the career center so they could call into the career center and say, hey, I'd like an intern
Mm.
to help with this. We do that. It's probably not as many students as just generally one would like, but we do have a significant portion of the students who go out and do the internship. The other interesting part about entrepreneurship is a lot of them are going out and doing their own thing too. So I'm not going to tell a kid who's out there starting that they're running through the first rounds of starting up their own business and doing some things that they need to stop that and go work for somebody else as an intern. So they're doing some of those self internships, if you will, where they're testing out their ideas and they're trying to get sales and they're trying to refine that. So there's a little bit of both, but it's definitely a real world experience either way you look at
Very nice. What are some of the cool business ideas that some of the students have tried to start through your time there?
it. We have one of our kind of high points throughout our year is our entrepreneurship challenge. So it started out as the Pirate Entrepreneurship Challenge. I think we're in the year number 9 this year. We just finished up year 9 in April. Last year, we had a fairly substantial gift from one of the early investors in Golden Corral.
Mm.
And so now it's called the G&T A-Man Pirate Challenge. And we start out in a 3-round challenge. It's a long way to get to the answer to your question. We started a 3-round challenge. In the first round, we have every college has a mall or a quad or a yard or whatever you call it, and so we'll set up tables and have 75 teams pitching their products and their ideas. So this is open to any student on campus, and all you have to have is like an idea. So we've got the poster boards, think science fair, right? Poster
Mm.
boards, samples of products, and students are walking around. We have judges who are walking around, the administration's walking around, and these kids are just pitching all day. It's just pitch, 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 and the 12 that get the highest ratings out of that go on to our round 2, which we turn into kind of the voice competition. So we have 6 mentors, and the 12 teams come in and pitch, and then each mentor is going to pick a team. And so the 6 finalists go on to round 3. And in round 3, we have a fairly all-star panel of entrepreneurs, business people, successful alums, professors from other colleges come in and judge. And this year we gave a total cash and in-kind package of about $280,000
Oh,
spread across 6 students. So there's
wow.
First National Bank does an award for the Rural Impact Award. Several businesses have ideas. We've got legal help, marketing help, valuations. The number 1 team gets a venture capital offer. So there's a fairly big incentive to do well in this, and we see a lot of fun stuff in there from everybody. Some entrepreneurs win. Last year, I think she's getting a master's or a PhD in physics or something. Chemistry won. It's just whoever has this idea that comes up with. But we've had things. Our number 1 first ever winner is still in business. It's a business called Simple and Sentimental. Started out doing like graphics, vinyl cuts on glasses. Her big thing that got her big attention was bridesmaids kits. So you have a
Oh,
bride and through that. So you open up a t-shirt shop. Along the way, we've had a bunch of. If you're ever in a North Carolina convenience store, and if you ever see a little juice pouch called Booze Juice,
yeah.
that came out of the Pirate Entrepreneurship Challenge. Um, yeah. And so we do everything from that up and through. We had a chicken and waffles food truck win one year. The student was launching that. 2 years ago, we had a concerted effort to help save horseshoe crab populations. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but horseshoe crab blood is used to test any injectable drug that's ever been made.
Well, okay, slow down. It's horseshoe
Crabs blood.
crabs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So commercially, they'll go out and harvest horseshoe crabs. They'll bleed 10, 25% of their blood and throw them back. As I like to say, they don't even give them a Coke and a cookie. They just throw them back in. And so we had an aquaculture student team up with one of our entrepreneurship students, and they won with this plan of reducing that morbidity rate to zero and still being able to sustainably harvest horseshoe crab blood because it sells for like $60,000 a gallon. So
Wow.
um, this year, our big winner developed an app. It's called Campus Cribs. It helps students and local landlords meet up for student housing. So it can just be,
Yeah.
if you're a surf fan, there's a product out there called Surf Stick, which is a new way of doing surfboard wax with this patent pending refillable applicator that came out of the Pirate
Wow.
Challenge. Um, then we just doing some fun stuff. They didn't win, but I kind of wish they did. We had a company 2 years ago called Dude Trips, right? Because apparently dudes are bad at planning trips.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
fundamentally they set up a travel agency, but they market it as dude trips, and they'd be like, you and your college buddies want to go to Manitoba and hunt elk, or do you want
Yeah.
to go whitewater rafting, or and then they set that up, and that was kind of one of those perfect examples because they didn't win, but they made $24,000 that semester. So
Wow.
yeah, so there is just a number of ideas, everything from clothing lines to prosthesis to we had a new kind of dog harness, leash harness last year. So all kinds of stuff that comes out of this. So yeah,
Wow. And some of those, I mean, there's some research and development going on.
oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
man.
There you get the first, you get the guy that had an idea last Tuesday, and then you get the people that have been working on this for years and really kind of in it to win it. So we had one. We have a rule that if you finish in the top three, you're kind of done. But if you finish outside of the top three, you can come back the next year. And it's interesting to see how the business models change.
Mhm.
We had one student was doing a called Kid Fit, which was basically a kids CrossFit kind of idea, and it started out kind of. And I'm kind of speaking out of turn for, it, but it felt like it started out like if you're in CrossFit and you need something to do with your kids or whatever, you could
Yeah.
then they go to Kid Fit and everybody exercises and it's all good. Over the course of the year between the two challenges, she had morphed her idea into a licensing kind of product where you could go to a school that didn't necessarily have a PE teacher or enough staff, and you could have a teacher like get certified as a kid fit instructor, and then they would send out monthly curriculum. This is
Wow.
what you need your kids to do, and they would research that, and they had pediatricians on it, nutritionists on it, and so they were providing this certified plan where you say, here's what you need to do this week or this month in your PE classes. So instead of just taking the kids out and saying, play kickball for 20 minutes, you could actually do something to help get kids moving and get them exercise. So that whole idea morphed from this idea of being involved with, and it's still kind of related to CrossFit in a way, but instead of being an in-gym thing for kids, it's now can be any school in the US who needs to do a little bit better with physical education can do it. So you can really see them dive in, the effect of the mentors you can see, and they'll come back and they'll morph. We have team names changing between the first and third round, so they're really working hard at it.
Are you guys kinda on the forefront of this and the partnerships across campus as well that you talked about earlier?
Yeah, it's there's a group. I mean, it's a small community, entrepreneurship schools. You go to conferences and we talk to people. and everybody trades ideas, but that's kind of the holy grail of really integrating the programs. Some of them sit just kind of maybe they have a center that just sits outside of campus. We have a bachelor's degree, we have our center, and we have an innovation hub with a maker space. So if you need to come in and 3D print something or embroider something or whatever you need to do to get your prototype up, you can do that. Um, but our challenge is way out there in the lead, but then there's going to be some other schools that maybe do a little bit better at incubators than we do. And that's one of our next things we're working on. Once you start the small business, how do we get you to the next step so that you can continue out into the world and do it?
Very nice. And I like the other part of what you do is in the leadership and professional development program is I don't think most small business owners and certainly brand new business owners, I don't think they see themselves as leaders at all. I think more times than not, they're just trying to hang on for dear life and pay the bills.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that we talk about. And one of my personal soapbox, which I will endeavor to not get on here because I'm pretty sure you're time limited to something, is this idea that the popular press, if I may kind of generalize it, seems to have equated leadership and management. And I think it's a way of softening the blow, right? There was a time when, and some companies still do this, but there was a time when we moved from kind of labor management into like associates and team leaders.
Mm.
It felt like it was just softening that blow of saying, "Oh, you're not management, you're workers," which is ridiculous because we need both, and they're both important, and they don't necessarily do each other's jobs. And so this idea that we talk about senior leadership, and one of my least favorite phrases in the world is leadership team, because you don't get appointed to be a leader. You get appointed to be a manager, or you get hired to be the CEO
Mhm.
or whatever. But leader is within you. It's the kind of person that you are, right? Brene Brown says, "Who we are is how we lead." And so even these people that you're talking about who are just kind of fighting the day-to-day battle are big leaders. People look up to them, and they want to see how they're doing, and they want to help, and they want to be a part of that thing. So our leadership program, unlike a lot of universities, is available to every student in the business college. And when I say available, I mean they're required to take it. And it's just this idea that everybody teaches the same accounting, everybody teaches the same supply chain, everybody teaches the same of these curriculum. But if you're going to go out in the world and get the job and do what you want to do, there has to be something a little bit different, right? You're kind of selling yourself, if you will. And that has to do with this leadership program. And that you've been a leader in college, you were a leader in high school. You just don't think of it that way. And so whether it's a study group or a fraternity or a sorority or a sports team, there's all these opportunities to be this leader. And so it's important to understand what that means and how you want to address the world. So, yeah, we think it's a little bit differently about that too.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. It's yeah, just because you have a title doesn't mean you're a leader. I always talk about like if you're a service industry and you want to get into one of the nicer neighborhoods and you need to find the Pied Piper because the HOA may not let you in. Maybe the golf pro, may not be the golf pro, maybe the guy that runs the the cart shack,
Yeah,
or it could be the mom who volunteers on the PTA, volunteers on Little League, has no official title, but that's who people call because,
right.
hey, I know you've been doing this. Can you help? And so I'm glad you guys point that out because just because you have a title doesn't mean, just because you're department manager doesn't necessarily mean you're a good manager. They, like
Yeah,
you said earlier, they just need to fill the spot. But yeah, yeah, leaders show up in different ways.
yeah, and we talk about that a lot. And if you want to go back and talk, kind of management philosophies, Henry Fayol back in the early 1900s was talking about managers being, planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And so leadership and leading is part of that, but management has very much to do with, do we have enough people on shift tomorrow? Are the orders in? What's our projections and all of these kind of internal execution focused things? Whereas leaders are looking externally, and it could be the same person,
Mm.
and it could be different people, and it could be you on any given day, right? Maybe every Monday morning you spend an hour thinking about, how's my company going? What's my week going to be like? That's your leadership time. And then you spend the rest of it in the trenches, mowing the yards or painting the houses or whatever it is. And that's fine. But they are just different. And they're both important, is really the kind of point we're trying to make. And you may have to wait to be a manager, but you certainly don't have to wait to be a leader.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen different kids come through there, some, uh, vocal, not in a bad way, but more
Mhm.
outgoing, and then you've probably seen some real introverts that turned out to be pretty good leaders because people got to know them and, kinda like a few words goes a long way, things like that.
Absolutely, and you kinda at some point have to tell, the people that speak up all the time, you may wanna dial that back a
Mhm,
little bit, and you tell the people that are the introvert or shy people is like, "Hey, step forward," right? Because those are behaviors, and those are that's the kind of person you are, but loud and gregarious does not equal leadership. It doesn't negate it,
mm.
but it's just not the same, and so teach people sometimes, one of the big tips that I love is that sometimes it's the last person who speaks in the meeting who has the bigger impression because you just come at it more quietly. And if you're just going to jump in at the beginning, you may have some good ideas, but you may be brushing some really good ideas away too. So it's all about recognizing that. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about how you approach the world, and it's about how you think about other people.
Along with being an entrepreneur instructor, you yourself are an entrepreneur, a manager of Legal Shield. Uh
Feels like it goes with the territory. Yeah,
Yep.
kind of got
Well,
to
but it
practice
helps.
and preach.
Yeah, yeah. You know
Yeah,
what not to do because you tell
yeah,
people that 3 days a week, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yep.
how do you grow? Because with Legal Shield, we
Uh,
never need you until we need you, and sometimes the time has passed and we never got you, and now we're in real trouble. So, how
yeah.
do you take off the professor hat and put on the entrepreneur hat and go out and grow a business?
Yeah, I do it through, well, I mean, it feels like it's kind of, I have to say this, but I do it a lot through BNI, right? I
Mhm.
mean, but that's the point, right? Is you have to do that networking. I like talking to people. I don't know that this is the kind of thing that works well with social media ads, at least
Mm.
not for me. This is about knowing people. It's about talking to people. It's about explaining what it is. It's about talking about inflection points in your life. Things need to be changed. And a lot of folks, the immediate reaction I get probably more than anything is like, I'm not going to commit a crime. Why do I need a lawyer?
Mm.
Right? Which is, and I get it. That's what you see on TV a lot. But the reality is that there's a lot of stuff in your life that you need to do that, and you need to get your will updated once a year. You need to, I know maybe something happens, like you have another grandchild and something needs to be changed, and you've got a child that's about to get a driver's license,
Well,
and that works. And there's just so many of these things that make your life easier. And so in that way of saying, hey, for legit $50 a month, you can have somebody who can call
mm.
anytime. And it's like your doctor, right? Dr. Google doesn't always get it right. Neither does Google and Google Esquire law firm. And so you want somebody that you can call, you can ask a question.
Yep.
It just makes sense to put that in your arsenal.
Yeah, and a lot of times we don't plan on running into family issues.
Mm-mm.
Somebody passes, if somebody sells something or there's a big rift, and you know this, anytime money is involved, you learn a lot about a family.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think there's a lot of other stuff, and because of the fact that there is a perception that lawyers are expensive, if you're doing something small, like being a rideshare driver or a delivery driver, or even honestly mowing your neighbor's yard, and then a rock flies out and busts the windshield on their Porsche, right? You, you just need to have that in your back pocket, and it's nice to be able to do it. That's not 300 $400 an hour, but it's make all the phone calls you want. But it's understanding that that goes in your pocket. I think we think of insurance, but we also think that insurance is mandated, so you don't really think about it. But it's an interesting thought experiment to say, if it wasn't required for you to have auto insurance when you're driving, would you?
No, no.
And then, but I hope you got like $50,000 in the bank to buy a
Yep,
new car when somebody hits you and it's not your fault, right?
yep.
Or and so that's what we see a lot of. It's the life changes that you need to go through, and it's also just the times when it's not my fault that the guy that ran the red light was also driving a white car and they thought it was me. So, it's just that for a reasonable budget amount to just have that safety. And there's nothing better in the world than telling somebody like, hang on, let me just call my attorney and I'll,
Yeah.
I'll call you back
Oh, that'll change the conversation real quick, won't it?
in a heartbeat.
Well, and also you have one of those BNI seats, and again, folks in BNI, where it's seat specific. So there's only one legal shield seat, one painting
Yep.
seat, stuff like that. So you have one of those seats that is not commonly chatted about. Most people don't walk around bragging they're either suing someone or about to get sued or
Yeah.
something like that. So that's where those relationships in B&I come in handy, where one friend can refer you to another friend and just stays between the three of you and the world doesn't have to know about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the nice part. And you just talk and you can just explain what you do. And at some point it's going to make sense or it's not. And there, well, I have a small business and I had a gentleman, a BNI client out of Raleigh. We're just talking one day and he's got a business and we talked to him about it. And he said, kind of that's how much a month? And I told him, he said, well, I mean, don't even, we can stop talking now. That is just, why would a business owner not have that? Called me back 4 weeks later and said that he had the attorney send a fellow a letter and he got $1,200 that he was owed that wasn't coming down. So,
Oh,
it just works. I have either fortunately or unfortunately had the option to check out the whole, just take a picture of your ticket and send it in and get that taken care of. Um, so I don't know if you know this or not, but if you're using one of those bumper hitches in North Carolina, don't let it obscure your license plate because that's not good. So
I thought you had to put your license plate on the back of the trailer, right?
Yes. Well, but if it's one of those bumper hitches that fits into like the
Oh, yeah.
receiver on, yeah, and it's fine. But then when you pack it up and it blocks your license plate, that's
It-
and so you can do that. But it is an interesting seat. It's also just a little inside baseball for BNI. It's an interesting seat that can get kind of chipped away at. We cover legal seat, but you could also have like an estate attorney, which that's a service. So you could also have you know. Um, like another kind of attorney, or criminal attorney, or family attorney, or something. So there can be some, but there's some good play in there too, because not everybody. It's like with a lot of other seats, right? CPAs don't necessarily like to do bookkeeping, and bookkeeping don't do what CPAs do. So you can make partnerships, but you just talk about it, and it fits in quite nicely. Um, it may be that the lawyer who's charging $400 or $500 an hour wants to have somebody he can refer to when somebody doesn't have $500 an hour. So
Yep.
it all works out, but it's a good seat. But that conversation bit, the chatting with people one on one, just explaining what you do, and kind of you're there when they need you.
Oh, yeah. All right. So way back in the day, we'll leave the date for people to assume how old we are and about what time of century that was. You
Which
and
century it was?
you enrolled in Westminster College. You
Oh my
ended.
goodness, you went way back.
Oh yeah, these are the fun questions. Page one of Google's boring. I need page three. That's where you get the fun stuff, right? So you eventually got a BA in computer science and broadcasting from Westminster College, but on day one, you're on campus at Westminster College. What was the plan?
Day one, my plan was to be a technical theater major.
Oh, all
Yep.
right.
Yep. I had come out of high school where we did some theatrical productions, and I wasn't much of an actor and didn't really care for that. But this whole kind of back scene, sort of making things happen, making the magic of live theater happen, was really intriguing to me. And so um, that was my initial plan. And somewhere in that first month, for better for worse, I fell in with a bunch of the folks that were working at the radio station, and they seemed to be a lot more fun to me than the folks that were working the theater. And so I decided to switch out. And my dad's like, maybe you should minor in something.
Yeah.
So I picked computer science, which was shall we say, an up and coming field at that point. And
Yep. And
then
so, yeah,
yeah,
go
my
ahead.
counselor said, "Well, you've got like 2 classes to take in your senior year, and you can double major." I'm like, "Man, okay, so no big plan,"
Wow.
but that's what happened.
Okay. And you are part of the Farmville Community Arts Council. Is that the
I
one?
w-
Is that the one
yep,
where you and Fred are involved in all those shows?
yep, worked with them a long time. I've kind of stepped back a little bit, timing, and they've gone on, but they're still going on strong. And I've worked with them, did a lot of great shows with them. Um, I work for one very, very hectic week a year. The
Yeah.
North Carolina Academy of Dance Arts puts on the Nutcracker, and we do that with a full orchestra in Wright Auditorium on campus here, somewhere around late November, early December kind of thing. So I still work that show every year.
All right. Now, looking back at previous jobs you've held and businesses you've been in all over
Mhm.
the place, found a commonality that a lot of these involve planning and problem solving. Would that be
I'm
correct?
just, I'm, I'm just really happy I don't have to pay for this therapy session. That's fabulous.
Cost you biggie sweet tea. Everybody knows that's my price. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I'd much, I'd much rather solve a problem than run a stable business, I think.
Yep.
There's something about that, figuring it out, what's going on, how do you fix that? And then once you've fixed it, you can be like, hand it off to somebody else and let them do it. And the planning kind of comes in part with that. How do we make this better? I love process. I love thinking about how do we make things work? How do we make things work better? Um, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, because I kept looking at, and there's some IT
Mhm.
worlds you've been in, teaching, just putting on a play.
Yeah,
Okay, what happens if? Yeah,
yeah,
and yet if it is, so I just started looking at these like, okay, I see a pattern here.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so a couple years ago, and this thing, and I'm sure. Well, I maybe shouldn't be sure, but do you know the story of the Nutcracker? I'm on a if you're necessarily a big ballet person, but the first act is kind of a party scene, and they have this Christmas party, and then the young girl falls asleep, and basically the second part of it's dreamlike. But in the middle of that, we have to make the stage really big, so it makes the people look really small. And so we have this wonderful machine that we have a Christmas tree, and then it's tied to a winch in the back, and then the winch pulls the Christmas tree up, and it gets bigger, so it looks like the room's growing. Now, one year in the middle of the show, at that point, went did my thing backstage, hit the winch switch, puff of smoke,
Oh,
and nothing's moving. And you don't stop ballet; it's a live orchestra, and
no.
everybody's just running along. And of course, the backstage one of the fun parts is we're all connected by headsets, so everybody's chit chatting. And the stage manager's like, "Make the tree grow," and I said, "The winch blew up," and he said, "Fix it," which I thought
Okay.
was a very interesting kind of comment
Yeah.
because it's not like you're going to get your tools to diagnose some things, but you just literally had to make that thing work at that moment with no
Mm.
known way to do it. And that's just a fascinating place to live.
Yeah, because he didn't say fix the winch. He just said grow the
No,
tree.
no,
Yeah,
we didn't care about the and
grow
again,
the tree.
this goes back to the earlier part of the conversation where really I'm not worried about your product. I'm
Yeah.
worried about the solution.
Yeah.
The winch was only one way to do it. As it turns out, two large guys hanging on the rope also another way to do it. So
Nice. Did
if
you
you
save money on the winch each year after that, just hiring two large guys?
no, because it's problematic to do that. And the tree instead of growing like this was going like so no. But then the worst part about it was we came in the next day and it worked perfectly and it's worked perfectly ever since.
Yeah. Did you get an attaboy for Johnny on the spot thinking?
No, I got to do your job.
Or
You know,
what took you so long,
it
right?
was my job and I did it. And kudos, sir.
All right. So we have a bunch of people listening each week. Some have businesses. Some are probably thinking of starting a business.
Yes, by
From an
whom?
entrepreneurial mindset, what kind of
Mhm,
things would you want them to answer or figure out if they have in place or anything like that?
mhm. I think from that beginning, if you're thinking about if you want to start or if you think if you're contemplating that, I think the big thing to look at is what is it that you're doing. It becomes geometrically or whatever that algebraically whatever that phrase is harder if you're just trying to figure out something that would be a cool career.
Mm.
I think the bottom line is you really need um to want to solve this problem, right? And I know you're of the right age group. I say this in orientations a lot, and the parents always grin. But I always say this, hey, you know, check out this problem. I'll solve it. You
Nice.
know the rest of that lyric?
Oh, yeah. I get it.
Okay.
And the
So
kids are
so
like,
so
"Why are all the parents laughing?"
yeah.
Yeah.
So we do a little vanilla ice thing and it's fine.
Yeah.
But I think that becomes the thing you need to be really interested in solving that problem because you don't really know how you're going to solve it. And so if you become too enamored with the solution, you're going to lose your marketplace.
Mm.
Right? It's like all of the old companies in the oldie days that sold buggy whips to make horses go went out of business when cars came along. But if they had knew that they were in the business of making transportation go faster, they would have all become, gas pedal manufacturers.
Mm.
And so you have to keep that in. So if you've got something in your life that you're like, there's got to be a solution to this, and I'm going to find it. then that's the trick, because then people will, right? And there's a wonderful video on YouTube called The Shirtless Dancing Guy. And I recommend everybody goes and watches it, because that person who says this is a problem and I'm going to figure out a way to fix this and make people's life better, there's another person that comes along that's called the first follower. And that person says, oh, yeah, Mike Manning, he's got a great idea. I want to be a part of that. Now you become the leader because you now have a follower, but it's that person who's coming in to saying, great, what can I do? And you have to be the person who's fine. What's your skill set? I'm going to plug you in here. And then somebody else is going to come along and you plug them in this other part, and you hold that team together. So the entrepreneur really, in the way I think about it, holds the vision in the team and is the one who's going to, at the end of the day, say, yes, we've solved this problem. And it's probably not going to be in the way that you thought it was going to be solved when you began, because that's up to the team. But you have to hold that vision, and you have to be the one who, somebody leaves because they get a better job offer. Great, we're going to still put this thing together. And if you're in it just because, oh, I thought this would be fun, or I thought it'd be neat to write an app or whatever, it's hard to keep the momentum going in that time. But if you are rock solid on, I'm going to solve this problem somehow, some way, then I think you'll do okay. I think that becomes the important thing, and people and skill sets and investors and all of that are going to come and go,
Yeah.
but you're going to solve that problem no matter what.
Yeah. And a lot of times solutions, and again, that's what consumers are buying. They're like
Mhm.
Chip talked about earlier, they're buying the hole in the 2x4 because that's what they
Yeah.
need. That can be in the time or the money category. So you are, let's say, let's go back to the landscaper, and
Yeah.
literally you cut grass and make lawns look beautiful. That's worth something to somebody because they don't have to do it.
Right.
That you just gave them time back. A, because they don't want to do it, which means B, they're probably going to be bad at it. And so don't think of, oh, well, I've got to invent something that people can
Mm-mm.
buy and use wherever. No, no, no. You can give people a lot of time back, and the right people will pay for that dearly.
Absolutely. And you can do the math on it, which I always tell people it's why I mow my own yard, right? Because actually, if I pay the lawnmower, the landscape guy, then I'm actually losing money. It's based on what my hourly rate is. But it's, that's the deal. What do they want? And there are some people that just that maybe that's their meditation time when they're just pushing the mower or riding the mower around their yard. Then you're not going to sell them landscaping services because
Yep.
it's not a good fit. And we don't necessarily care whether you use a zero turn mower or you use a pair of scissors or
Mm.
what. I just want to come home from work and have my lawn looking good. And you need to do that in a way that makes me happy, but also costs you less money. So you're making a better profit. So yeah,
I,
it's keeping the eye on the big picture.
yeah, yeah. Um, so what is there a website people can go to learn more about the School of Entrepreneurship and everything you guys are doing over there?
There certainly is. Let me find out what it is because I should know it, but I don't. But you're going to go to ecu.edu. That is our main website. And then if you do /MSOE, ecu.edu/MSOE, that will take you to the Miller School of Entrepreneurship's website.
Very nice. All right, so we've been putting Chip's phone number on the screen here. If you are a budding entrepreneur and you want to stay in state, give him a call.
Okay.
If you need Legal Shield help or don't know if you need it, please give him a call.
Or curious if you need it. Yeah. Yeah.
And you won't have to answer many embarrassing questions, but he'll let you know here's some ways that could help you. But please give him a call on that. Chip, always a lot of fun. Appreciate the stories,
Absolutely.
but more important than just the mindset of
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. You could have you could be a painter with two crews and be a wonderfully successful entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in some senses, one kind of last shot, I think that there are a lot of places, especially in Eastern North Carolina, where we are. A lot of these towns would rather have that. I
Mm.
mean, it's nice if you can walk in and say, "Hey, I'm going to bring in 800 jobs," but the problem is that you're going to want tax incentives, and then when the tax incentives run out, you're going to take your 800 jobs and go somewhere else. But if you're two or three trucks in a crew and you're hiring 6, 8 people, and you put 10 of those kind of small businesses, now we're talking 80, 120 people have kind of life-changing jobs that are going to pass from generation to generation. I mean, I think there's a ton of value in that, and that's really what we like. It's where we're headed.
Very cool. All right, Jeff, appreciate the insight into good stories, and we'll see
Absolutely.
everybody next time on Capital to the Coast BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by StreamingGear.com and DeltaForce.net.